It's sunny.
Okay, folks, we are live. I'm calling this meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. and ask that Cindy read the statement of compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act into the record, please.
This meeting is being held in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act with meeting notice provided to the Trenton Times, the Hunterdon County Democrat, members on the listserv and department heads. The meeting agenda offers planned action items at the time of the publication and is subject to change. This meeting is being recorded and streamed live using the Zoom meeting platform. Welcome.
Please.
Councilwoman Kaminsky.
Here.
Councilwoman Lambert.
Here.
Councilman Lai.
Here.
Council President Stegman.
Sure.
Mayor No.
You betcha.
Gotcha.
Yeah, present. All right, I would ask us to that promotion to convene into closed session. That's not so. We'll take the Council President as a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, just to clarify, it's for issues related to potential contracts pursuant to NJSA 10:4-12B7.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I set on my agenda, but there it is. In black. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the meeting, which has already been opened, and the statement of compliance has been read. We were in closed session for a little while. We're now back in open session. So welcome again, and I'd like everyone to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence in memory of our troops serving here and abroad. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, free. Thank you. Let's get underway. The minutes are not quite ready, so I don't know if you've seen that. You probably didn't have a chance to review them. So we're gonna put off on holding. We're gonna hold off on giving minutes until our next meeting. Did everyone on the council have a chance to look at the administrative reports? Yeah, were there any questions about any of them?
No.
Okay. Just a couple of statistics I'll share with the public, but I just pulled out of these reports. 674 parking summonses last month. That's a lot. 112 tons of trash were picked up in the city last month. We're at 1,064 tons year to date. The clerk's office, in an effort to catch up with people on landlord registration, took in $3,600 in landlord registration fees last month. So thank you to everybody who registered, albeit late. And I would also note one thing that was not on the DPW report was that Brittany Kerr had a baby. So very pleased for her. Her baby is Taliana, a healthy girl, was delivered. I'm not sure the exact actual date, but within the last couple of weeks. So congratulations to Brittany. And thanks to the DPW for all the work they've been doing lately. They've been doing repairs to playground equipment. Last year just completely changed the sewer line in the Holcomb house up at Holcomb Park, which was leaking. So they've been keeping busy. So if there aren't any questions or comments about the administrative reports, I would ask for a motion to accept them.
So moved.
All right, second. Second. And all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And at this point, I would open the meeting up for public participation. Following our usual requirements, we would ask you that, unless you have a mobility issue, to step up to the podium here. Please state your name, address. You have 3 minutes of time uninterrupted for questions or comments. The council may or may not respond.
Hi, Judy Gleason, 86 North Union Street. I think some of these, the two things I'm going to mention, I think might come up later in the meeting, one in particular, but I'm not going to be here later in the meeting. So I want to identify two things. One, the joint toll bridge commission meeting October 30th is a chance for members of the public and anyone else to go and say what this means to our town, to close the bridge without opening it for traffic around weekends. Back in 2004, the arrangement was able to open the bridge on weekends. And they were able to get it done, and they were able to do it in a way that was not as damaging to our community and our businesses. And people should go to that meeting if they possibly can, because they need to know how important it is to us. And I see it's on the agenda at the end, but I'm not gonna read it again. Second thing, as people probably know, the session for people for dealing with Hurricane Ida happened this week, and there were a number of people who attended and were able to share what they had gone through, which I was obviously happy that they did. But the only reason I mention it now is I had hoped and thought and expected maybe even that there will be something on this agenda, because we still haven't taken some of the steps that many people have talked about, that were talked about the other night, that were talked about in the report that Dave Bird and I did, that were talked about in the survey by people. So I'm hoping maybe there's some way in your discussions at the end of this meeting or something, we can move the ball forward a little bit further on that. So, thank you.
Paul Stevens, 39 Quarry Street. Just kind of a comment on some of the grants we're getting. They're usually passed in the resolution part, and like the one today. Consequently, there's not much discussion. But what raised my eyebrows on this was, all right, on this one now we're going to have to spend another $38,000. It seemed like the way I read it. Is that coming out of that grant? That's one question. If not, where are we getting that money to spend on that? And then also, some grants potentially have some encumbrances, but there's usually not much discussion about these grants and what they might or might not mean to the city in the future. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room? Anyone online? How would you know how many people are online, please?
4 people online. Yes.
Okay. We have a motion to close the public comment period, please. So, a second, please.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. So Paul, we'll talk about this grant a little bit. I was gonna hold off until we hit the resolution, but I can talk about it briefly now. This particular grant is laid out differently than some other grants. The grant amount has, if we approve these resolutions tonight, will be credited to the city's account. Currently, there is no financial outlay for the city with this grant. It's all in kind. You will note that there is one resolution for the amount of $25,000 from our current open space county account that we have asked to just kind of to keep that handy in case there is anything that comes up. But at this point, we don't anticipate any city funds expended on that grant at all. Everything is an in-kind donation. So the grant paperwork is available, I think, online. I think it's on the Clausen or the Holcomb Park website. So the particulars of the grant are there, and I'm happy to talk more about them. But at this point, we don't anticipate any financial commitment from the city, all in kind.
Do not identify which grant you're referring to.
The National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant. Thank you. Should have said that. Moving on, we have a driveway application. Kristen Adair Matthews from 15 Swan Street. This application is to install a driveway on the South Union Street side of the property. So I'd like to, I'm sorry, can you note, I'm gonna ask Bill to confirm the public notice was properly provided?
Correct.
Okay. And I will ask, Kristen, if you could step up to the mic and just kind of give us an overview of your application, please. Welcome.
Oh, sure.
I'm Kristen, 15 Swan Street. So basically what I'm looking to do is take part of my yard, the back part. So I'm on Swan Street, on the corner of Swan and South Union. Take part of the yard and the backyard that abuts up next to 48 I believe South Union, which already has a driveway and place a driveway there. There previously, a previous owner had a little garage there and a curb cut before. They've torn that down. The curb cut's still there. It's to be augmented with this. Currently, I do have a patio back there, but I'm gonna rip the patio out so I can make sure that there's enough, impervious surface there, yard. I do have 2 dogs.
If you can just speak up a little bit.
Yeah, it's really hard to hear.
Oh. All right, let me start over.
No, did you catch everything, Council President? So
I
far?
basically read the
Okay.
ordinance, so, I get what you'd like to do.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, did everybody have a chance to look at this application online? I went down and visited it, seemed pretty straightforward to me with the existing curb cut. There's a telephone pole just to the right of the existing curb cut. We don't anticipate that being an issue. It seems like it's okay. Were there any questions from the council before I open this up to public comment? No? Council President, you're good?
I'm good.
Everyone sure? Okay.
Yeah.
So we do have an opportunity for this application for the public to have comments or to ask questions. So if you have a question or a comment about this application, I'll ask you just to step up to the podium. I'll quickly step away if you want to speak. Okay, I don't see anybody here. Do I need to? Yes, I guess I need to make a motion to close the public comment for the. Nobody online? No, anybody online? Okay, thank you.
Mayor, could we just note that in accordance with the ordinance, the Public Works Director and Lieutenant Brown weighed in?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. It's a lot on my agenda. Apparently overwhelming tonight. All right, so may I have a motion to close the public comment period on this application, please?
So moved.
Yes, thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
All right.
All right, are there any final questions about this application from the council? Okay, hearing none, I would ask the motion to approve the application filed by Kristen Adair Matthews for the driveway on the South Union side of 115 Swan. Make a motion. Yes,
Second.
okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Very driveway. Moving on, we have the consent agenda. The following resolutions on the consent agenda are considered routine and should be enacted by one motion. Should any member of the city council seek a separate discussion of any item, that item shall be removed and discussed separately. Cindy, did resolution number 165 get added to the consent agenda?
It did.
So just for the council and the public, we did add a resolution tonight. It's resolution number 165, 2023. I'm just going to read this because not every possible, it's a short resolution, but possible not everybody's seen it yet. So this is a resolution to authorize a request for an extension of the grant agreement with NJDOT for project ID to the 2022 MA-00586. Whereas the city of Lambertville is the recipient of a grant from the state of New Jersey Department of Transportation for the LA-2022 MA Lambertville City Improvements to North Franklin Street from Route 179 to the rear entrance by Ely Memorial Park 10. And whereas the grant was awarded for the 2022 fiscal year, and the project has yet to be awarded by October 25th, 2023. And whereas the city of Lambertville has received bid for the projects which are being awarded, being up for consideration, being awarded on October 19th, authorized by resolution number 163, 2023 to fill asphalt. Whereas the reason for the request is for an extension is due to the improvements to the city's infrastructure from Hurricane Ida. Now be it therefore resolved by the governing body of the city of Lambertville and county of Hunterdon in the state of New Jersey that the mayor, city engineer, Spring City Clerk are hereby authorized to file an extension request with the state of New Jersey Department of Transportation ID 2022 MA-00586 for the North Franklin Street Road improvements. So the reason why we're doing this is this was a project that was undertaken in Mayor Fall's administration. Didn't get done in 2021, I think because of Ida. I think that's the reason. It did not do it in 2022 because we had 2 other road projects and we were putting the city back together. So we did file an extension, and just to make sure that we're, all our I's are dotted and T's are crossed. It was important for us just to put forward this resolution so that we could then move forward with the project so that we don't risk losing it. So it's really just a precautionary measure. Are there any questions from the council on this?
No.
Okay, so I'm just gonna highlight a couple of other resolutions on the consent agenda. So we talked a little bit about the special item of revenue. So the three resolutions that pertain to the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant are 152, 153, and 160. So again, this 152 is allowing us the insertion of a special item of revenue. That's chapter 159. I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. Excuse me. What's the? Here's the one. Where's the 179?
Is it 158?
No, so 150
I'm sorry.
allows us to put it in there.
150, my apologies. So it's resolution 150, which is insertion of the revenue of $322,000. That's the amount of the grant, and we will match that. The second resolution was the resolution to authorize the contract with Princeton Hydro for engineering and compliance assistance with the grant, not to exceed 217,184. And then the third one was
The open the Hunter County open space
thank you. What
for
number is that?
25,000. It's number 160.
Oh, there it is, yeah. So those are all related to the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. Just a couple of other quick points here. Resolution number 155-2023. This is a resolution to approve the stormwater pollution prevention plan as part of the stormwater management plan. It's a requirement of the new tier 4, the MS4 tier A permitting requirement. And I just need to give a special nod to Cindy and Lester, and also one to myself. We spent a lot of time working on it this year. It required multiple meetings on Friday mornings, a lot. It's a weighty document that required a lot of new procedural initiatives and so forth. So that's good work. And also just to say thank you for the shrubs and trees. The entrance to the nature trail on June Street. Thank you to the Sauerland Conservancy. Does the council have any questions about any of these resolutions that they would like to have answered?
Go ahead.
Maybe we can talk about the same. It's about 153.
No, that's not me.
Okay, you can.
Got a different one.
Okay,
My question is so we have this wonderful grant for $322,000.
yep,
And 217,184 is as a resolution to approve Princeton Hydro engineering and compliance assistance.
yeah.
That leaves a balance. I don't know what that is.
I can tell you the balance is for construction that will be bid during during a public process.
The balance mean between the
107 or what's that?
55.
No, it's like 105,000.
Now what? Could you just explain what they're doing for almost this entire grant money?
Did I put that at your
You didn't put what my,
I printed out the Princeton Hydro thing. Give me
Oh,
just one second.
yeah. I don't have that. I brought the. Think for a second here. Oh, no,
It opens.
I'm sure a mess.
So if you went to the resolution backup, I dropped the actual proposal in there. And the last page of the proposal, they say project kickoff and outreach, $9,700. It's for them.
Which project?
60 here.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that's one.
Yeah.
Oh,
That provides the breakdown.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, wasn't more specific, so.
thank you. This is,
So, and that's like public meetings, coming to the Parks and Recreation Commission
Right.
and talking about the grant. Then there's field activities and modeling that will be done.
Mhm.
And that is, they'll be working with volunteer groups. And this is how we partially match this grant of 322,000. So it's gonna require a lot of record keeping. And then after that, they'll go into a design phase, which will be 26,000. To finish the design phase will be about 30,000, because you have to keep in mind, this is all steep slopes. So they have to do a lot of engineering. And so if that's what a good amount of this goes,
Gotcha.
then $40,000 for them to apply for regulatory, and you're talking SHPO, you're talking DEP, and the county soil conservation, I mean, it's all, and then we're also going to need DNR Canal Commission. I don't get that because we're more than 100 feet, but can't buy, more than 1,000 feet, but they're requiring it. And then project implementation support, that's $32,000. That's for them to help us bid the project. And corral volunteers will actually do the work. And project management is to make sure that after we bid, whatever construction has to be done, they're going to make sure that every benchmark is hit along the way, and that's $10,000.
So what they're doing is they're setting, they're getting everything ready for us to then implement.
Correct.
In the future, and right now, it's the balance, we're talking about the balance of the unspent money to start.
Implementation.
Yeah, so, thank you for the breakdown.
So,
I didn't see them. so-
yeah, no, I'm sorry, I should, why don't we can we include those numbers in the minutes?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that they're absolutely clear to do what, are you guys good with it?
No, I'm with it.
All right. Councilwoman,
I have a question that's not nearly as weighty as as that.
I'll take
So.
yes or no question,
I
please.
think yes or no question. So the resolution 151, I see that we're rejecting bids and I understand that. I'm just curious about the project because it has to do with rewiring, right, to assess and does that include internet?
It does, and basically more internet than anything else. For the
Mhm.
first time we bid the project, we bid it with the electrical work. And we since found that you can't get somebody who does wiring for the internet.
That's
and
right.
Who's an electrician. And at the same time, we've started investigating our phone system that has not been the best. We drop calls, we have all kinds of issues, and so we thought, look, let's slow it down a little bit. Let's really define who we're going to go with our phone, rewrite the bid specifications, and then redo it. It probably won't be until 2024.
Okay, thank you. That was easy.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Which one is a follow-up question then? No?
No, no. It was a yes or no question.
All right, may I have a motion to accept?
moved.
All right, my conference, let me split that, all in favor, please say aye. I'm blushing a little bit, I don't know why, good one. And just before we move on, I'll note that, I'm pleased that we are awarding these projects to Earl Asphalt for the Studford and Swan and North Union and North Franklin Street projects. It's probably too late, it's definitely too late, I talked to people at Earl today to get those projects done before the winter. So they will be first on the agenda for spring.
My vehicle will thank you.
And on that note, are we going to fill any bad ruts then?
I haven't talked to Lester about it yet.
Okay.
You know, you'll lose
Is
it.
it-
We have a private wheel on top.
I-
All right, don't rate the mayor. All right, let's move on.
So, on.
Mayor's have enough correspondence this week. So resolution number 164 Karen, you started it. 164 2023, a resolution to authorize the submittal of the 2023 best practice inventory with a score of 38.5, no aid withheld. So this is another one of those documents that required a lot of work on Cindy's part, and it's been sent around to a variety of people. We reviewed it, and thank you for all of the work on that. It's a 38.5 out of what?
Oh.
100? What?
No, it's not 100.
It's not a.
It's less than 50, it's less than 50, but if you score less than 20 or 20 or less, you don't get any state aid, it's tiered. So this year at least, and this.
We're in the 95th
There you go.
That's right.
This question that we're waiting for final determination on, and that is for the tax collector bond. The state has changed their requirements and they now, they're not requiring it, but they're recommending that you increase the bond. So we've reached out to Pace, who is our joint insurance fund insurer. And they have received questions from every municipality that they fund, and so we're waiting to see. I'm pretty sure, I'm fairly certain that they're going to increase that bond. But if we don't know, this has to be responded, for the state, we've got to respond, I think, by the end of October, so. Either way, if we don't hear back from them, I'll just change that question to no, and we'll be -1 point.
Okay. So bearing that in
Hey,
mind,
can you explain what the bond is for?
Yeah, so statutory appointments for the tax collector, the tax assessor, the court, and then there's a blanket bond that actually also includes the court, the clerk. And other people, so bonding just in the event that somebody, we do have somebody malicious, or that there is a mistake, and so that person is bonded, they have to file an application, they have to have a good credit rating in order to have that, to receive that bond. And then that protects the city from any problems, issues. wrongdoing. You're welcome.
all right, so may I have a motion to approve the submittal of the best practice inventory for 2023, as soon as the question's been resolved?
So moved.
Second. Thank you, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Everybody look at the bills list?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Does anybody remember what the largest check we signed this month was?
No.
It was, so $715,000 to the county. We paid our quarterly county tax tomorrow, so that one stopped me in my tracks. Excuse my extra penmanship for that. May I have a motion to approve the bills list as submitted? Second. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Here. Motion carries. First reading ordinances. Ordinance number 30-2023. This is an ordinance to repeal ordinance number 02-2021. An ordinance of the city of Lambertville, County of Hunterdon, State of New Jersey, establishing regulations for the award of public contracts to political contributors pursuant to PL 2023-C30, the Elections Transparency Act, repealing NJSA 40A:11-51. So state of New Jersey has updated their pay-to-play requirements, and therefore we must repeal our ordinance. This is just a straightforward housekeeping measure. Any questions from anyone?
No.
All right. We have a motion to introduce on first reading ordinance number 30-2023.
So.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Well, thank you. And will note carries unanimously. I will note the public hearing is scheduled for November 16th, 2023. Next is ordinance number 31-2023. It's an ordinance to authorize an easement with the Lambertville Municipal Utility Authority for the North Union Street Park. So this is for an upgrade to the pumping station on North Union Street that will require an easement. As you probably remember, the pumping station was damaged in Ida. And it's taken a couple of years for the engineering to kind of come up with a plan, and for FEMA to get their paperwork in order and so forth. So this is allowing them to move on. This has been reviewed by the Parks and Rec Commission and received their input and was incorporated, which was incorporated into this resolution. So they have reviewed it and approved it as it's written. Are there any questions about it?
So I just saw about the bike station there, so do they have to remove that, or that's only if they have to? Is there that little stand, a little credit
It's
lights?
a question, they may not have to, but if they do, they'll have to pay to have it put back.
Yeah.
So
I guess-
it's more of the movement, it's not gonna be removed completely, it's just.
Yeah. And my own guess is that it's unlikely given the location of the
Yeah.
station, which is so close to the street.
I just see a lot of people using that because they're riding their bikes.
Yeah, no, it was a great addition to the park. So if there are no other questions, may I have a motion to introduce on first reading of ordinance number 31-2023 with a public hearing scheduled for November 16th?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thanks. Next is ordinance number 32-2023. This is an ordinance to amend the Lambertville City Code 2014, Chapter 5, General Licensing to include provisions to manage short-term rentals. I think there's going to be a little bit of discussion about this before I ask for a motion, based on a conversation I had today with Councilwoman Lambert. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Councilwoman.
Okay, thank you. I was just questioning, one of the criteria for grandfathering. Um. I guess in our allowances, I think in should be, we'll talk about how, what types of short-term rentals are permissible. And we're really limiting them to owner occupied, correct?
Yes, so the two, I think the two most important things to remember or to consider about this ordinance is, one, there's a grandfather clause, which will allow any existing short-term rental that is registered with the city to continue operating. The second would be that after the adoption of this ordinance, any new short-term rental applications would have to be, would require to be either owner occupied or primary residence.
Mhm.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. So I guess the question I have is by the grandfathering, like, we're in essence grandfathering a category of short-term rentals in grandfathering non-owner occupied. We're grandfathering properties that do not meet our regulations. Is that right?
That's incorrect. They do meet our regulations
Well,
insofar.
our new regulations.
Well, they will be required to meet the new regulations as part of the ordinance.
But then they don't, because they're non-owner occupied. That's
Well,
like,
there's-
That would be the one thing, they would, everything else they would have to comply with under here. It
right,
would just be,
so.
The registration and the inspection.
So, right.
whatever else. Yeah.
So I guess I just question, I want to have a discussion among the council about how we feel about kind of having this open-ended exception for an ownership that doesn't really fall in line with how we see this this type of property management going forward. Do we want to do something like a sunsetting? For example, because in another part where we talk about tenant sublets, we specifically mentioned that you're not allowed to be a tenant and sublet to a short-term rental. And we name a specific sunsetting date for existing contracts, right? That they have until January 1st, 2024 to be able to, execute the remainder of the contracts that have been promised. And I question why we're making an exception for one group, not making it for another. On the one hand, and on the other hand, I feel like we should implement. We have to implement guidelines, regulations, and it's kind of the principle of we're implementing it, but yet we're making this exception. And I'm a little uncomfortable with that.
So do you mind if I first ask Bill to kind of explain, to walk us through that section of the ordinance, because it is a little confusing.
Well, before you
I've
speak
got-
there, sorry. Yeah, thanks. So, in general, the idea, and the councilwoman pointed to, 5-11.2 lays out a lot of the issues that question, addresses, and with subsection B, that section lays out the types of properties. So, dwelling units in condominium associations, homeowners associations. So, those types of units, and then also single family residences and 2-family residences. All owner occupied. So going forward, the idea is that short-term rentals, any new applications would only be issued to owner occupied properties. There's two different types of grandfathering clauses that are discussed here, G and H. Subsections G and subsection H. G relates to property that's owned and there's an existing contract for rental. And then H is a property where a tenant as an existing contract. I think those are distinguished because they're limited to issues, and that's why there's a specific date, January 1st, 2024. Because they're limited to where there's an existing contract that, that's in place before, that's been executed before this ordinance becomes effective. What we were trying to avoid through these two sections was basically to have a legal contract between a property owner or a tenant that is void by operation of this law. It's not a comfortable place for the owner to be in, because they're out money that they were probably expecting, and, you know, depending on what the contract says, the short-term tenant, the transient renter, they could be out, you know, a deposit or even the whole amount, depending on how they paid and how the contract is structured. So we didn't want to harm anybody's expectations who, you know, signed a contract over the summer, for example, not realizing that the city was going to consider this regulation. So that's why it's limited there. And then obviously short-term rentals there for periods. I'm forgetting off the top of my head what we said as the amount of time.
31 days.
31 days, yeah. So, you know, it's possible that, anything that's adopted, and anything that's been executed before this is adopted in November, there's more than 31 days between the time this is going to be adopted and the end of the year. So that's kind of just that window to allow that, and it just applies to any existing contracts. The other sunset is, the other grandfather provision is in subsection F. And that relates, that's probably more of a long-term issue. It's, irrespective of whether they have an existing contract, but that applies to property owners who don't occupy their property, but they have registered with the city, as of the date of the adoption of this ordinance, so they're fully in compliance with the existing requirements that the city has. And provided that they have a designated individual who will be available 24/7 for the maintenance of the property and the conduct of the occupants of the property. And then third, provided that they're in compliance with the balance of the regulations in the chapters. The councilman said, the only thing that they're being grandfathered into is the non-owner occupied. For all other regulations that are in here, they're going to be required to comply. And I think the policy decision behind that was, we have some registered short-term rental properties that people made investments in the city to purchase those properties, to maintain them. They've otherwise been in good standing with the city. And I think the idea was to allow them to continue to operate in good standing. So it accomplishes that goal. And then also, I think there was a concern when this was initially discussed about, the city didn't want to see the proliferation of non-owner occupied properties. And this is kind of a way of having the ones that are operating in good faith and in good standing to allow them to continue, but also, going forward, any new short-term rentals, we're going to require that the owners, occupy them as it's set forth in this ordinance. So I think that's the policy consideration behind why there's that distinction. As far as the sunsetting issue, I have some concerns with it. It's, to be clear, there's nothing in the law that prohibits it. That's best I can tell that's the case. There's nothing that says that you can't include that language in the ordinance. My concern is, initially, and it's the more policy thing that, I think the idea at the outset was that the city didn't want to, have a property owner who made an investment, and then all of a sudden now, they kind of, well, we're not depriving them of that investment. Obviously, they still own it. They can still rent it long term. They can sell it, whatever. But they bought it for that purpose. They're in good standing. I think the idea was, maybe there's no harm in allowing that to continue, but only keeping it at the certain number that it's at now. And then second, with the sunsetting, I always, in evaluating any legislation, you get concerned with arbitrary, capricious, and unreasonable meeting that standard, and, you know, if there is a sunset, what's the appropriate length? And I don't think courts have decided that. I don't know if there's any other kind of similar regulatory ordinance that has a standard that we can rely on, so, you know, I'd be concerned with saying, you know, they can continue to operate until, I think the end of this year would be an incredible hardship, but, the end of next year, I think there is a potential concerns that why are we picking a year or 14 months, whatever the case may be, or why are we letting it go for 2 years or 5 years? You know, I don't know how we substantiate that. I'm not saying it can't be in there and, you know, we wouldn't fail this challenge, but it is a concern, and I think that's something that was considered, you know, when in drafting this, initially, but, you know, as to the preference, you know, I defer to your discussion on that.
And if I may just make one follow-up point that, you know, as noted in section 511-3, short-term rental expires automatically when the property is sold. So it's more than likely that if some of these grandfathered properties are eventually sold, that license, that permit will not move with the property, right? There's also the risk of, you know, having a permit pulled if there's, you know, the operational requirements aren't met. So, you know, it's really about keeping the existing short-term rentals in compliance with all of our regulations and our quality of life issues, and also, you know, stating that this is a permit that's been grandfathered into a specific owner based on, you know, history, based on relationship, based on expectations, and that if and when that owner transfers the property to someone else, that permit does not automatically transfer with the property. So at some point, there will be some attrition as people sell their properties or move. I don't know when that's going to be or how often it'll be, but you know, that's a component of the ordinance as well.
So I have a question. If a current non-owner occupied entity property, if the owner decides to incorporate to like an LLC before this ordinance is adopted, is there wiggle room to allow transition of ownership and extension by, you know, like the LLC remains the owner, right? And now the ownership has transferred within the LLC, but the legal entity remains the same. Are we creating, like, is there that opportunity? I guess I'd want to know one way or the other.
The definition of owner in the ordinance doesn't distinguish between natural persons and
Right,
business
Right.
entities, so. I would say no. I would say that, you know. I hate saying this, but, you know, business entities are treated, you know, they have the same property ownership, the same
they
rights
do.
as
Right.
as everybody else. So I mean, they would be treated as essentially the same person.
Okay.
So that's how it would be treated, yes.
Okay. Well, I'd want to know what other council members feel about it.
So, I have one question before we discuss the sunsetting clause, just a point of clarification. So we talk about owner operated. So let's say we have someone that owns two houses and they're adjoining right next door. And so they're two separate properties on the tax map. On this, it doesn't look like that counts as owner occupied. But they could own both properties and they just happen to own the place next door and they have a shared wall. I'm a little concerned about the language, whether or not that allows, like, what do they consider? Because I don't know if they're considered owner occupied.
Well, they're separate lots, right? And they're separate.
So, I mean, call it a twin, you know, it's a house.
They don't live on one side.
Yeah, but they own the next one,
No, I
and so
get it.
they are technically I mean, the concerns we have, it's not an absentee landlord, they're literally right next door. But I don't know if they would be able to continue I don't know if new people like that would be able to do this.
I'm looking at Bill.
I don't know if this answers your question, but I would prefer to be 3 in 11.2. So. And 2 as well, I think, I think. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think with these, there's 2 separate dwelling units. And it's, whether it's a 1-family or a 2-family. So I think the way this is structured, they would each be treated as either a 1-family or a 2-family. So if you're in one side, even though the other side is connected physically, I think that's a separate dwelling unit. So that wouldn't be, even if you own it, right, you wouldn't be able to, you'd have, if you're a new short-term rental operator, you would be limited to if you're connected to family, you can rent upstairs or you can rent your house out for however long, but you can't, just because it's physically connected, doesn't mean that you're occupying that other side, right? Yeah.
Okay, no, no question. I mean, personally, I don't have as much of a problem with those in that situation, because the owner is literally right next door and that's their primary residence, so I just think we need to think about that, because we were discussing that before. I kind of thought that was a permitted, we were okay with that use, and so this does not have that.
Okay, before I address that point, Council President, anything?
Yeah, so if I get this, to clarify, is the section of this new ordinance that deals with violations? Which just seems to be like, E, F, G, and if there are several complaints, then the city has actionable items to do, correct? Because it talks about fines and all. So even if we grandfather in the non-owner occupied, do these still apply? Yes. These are new regulations, and although they're grandfathered in, they're not grandfathered away. So the city would still have a right to cure,
Yes.
and if there's certain violations, I think even
that's
the
what it
mayor
says.
has the right to
Yes,
revoke,
he or she does.
revoke the license.
I think the best way to say it is the regulations in this apply to every Airbnb regardless of when they.
Okay, yeah. Thank you that was my question.
So what's our process for learning about violations? It seems like these in general, whether they be owner or non-owner occupied, require a fair amount of oversight. Is that, I'm kind of looking at the clerks. They do all the work.
Certainly it requires oversight in terms of, and we're gonna have to do a lot of software update writing and, we're gonna have to make an application, a separate application. I mean, currently filed under the landlord application. And the requirements are basically the same, right? So with these expanded requirements in terms of the application process, we are gonna have to work to create new applications, and there will be, next year will be difficult as we begin to put in the application, if we begin to file the applications for the first year. What happened when we changed software systems last year to SDL is that the landlord registration, and we had a lot of meetings about this, was hard for the first year. A lot of people, I had to be walked through it. A lot of people had to be walked through it. The second year is much easier because the software is already in place. You're the owner of record, so it becomes a fairly straightforward matter once the information is in the system. So it will be more work on the front end, and in terms of compliance, we have to rely on neighbors. We have to, if there's an incident that involves the police, obviously. All of those will be reported, and violations, tracked as we track all violations, and that's how we'll handle that.
Okay, just so we do everything else.
Yeah.
Because like the other landlords, we get a complaint. We review the ordinance, who's the person in charge, it goes right to them to investigate. We don't get involved in that after that point. We make the call, we make sure whoever is in charge of it follows
That's it.
through.
Right. And do we think that like the dollar figures that were around, set for permits and the application and the penalties, how did we get to those numbers? Or do you feel that those numbers are adequate?
Well, we had some discussion in City Hall about that, and in the end, I decided on the numbers. And they're higher than some of our other numbers. So landlord registration next year, I'm gonna bring forth amendments to that ordinance. I think that our fees are too low. And, one of the things that we've seen, over the course of the last couple of years is, and one of the things that I highlighted at Cindy's clerk's report is that, landlord registrations due April 1st, right? And then there are late fees, and then people don't file their registration. We have to send them registered letters, we have to create spreadsheets, it's a hassle, and so our fines need to be commensurate with the amount of work that's our city staff is being put through.
Great.
So, I thought that these were fair and appropriate, and they do not include the cost to have fire officials and fire inspections. They do not include cost of costs associated with lead paint inspections that would be required. So, that was the number that
I just have a question. So the fire inspection, when they come, you do fire inspection, you check for a smoke detector upon application, but then you wouldn't have to go back every year and get your smoke detector checked?
Smoke detector, I think it's an annual with a required biannual inspection.
But would,
Your question is.
so
the
you
short-term
pay a fee,
rentals.
on the short-term rentals, would you have to get inspected on that?
In
You
between.
pay,
in
yeah,
between,
no, annually, like
And
you pay the fee annually, and you get
Annually, yeah.
inspected possibly every other year.
every other year, yeah, all right.
That's actually what the statute says. The statute requires biannual inspections.
do we wanna have,
Annual, and
I don't, not the first year. I mean, we can
check on it every
if we
year.
want to do it yearly, but given the situation. Situation, yeah, let's stick with biannual knowledge.
I have thank you for that, I have one question.
Yeah,
In I, in the event that the city receives two substantiated complaints concerning excessive vehicles belonging to the transient occupant. How the heck do we monitor that?
well, it's,
Good question.
we put that in there. Bill and I had conversations about it. So we do require that if on-site parking is available, that it's identified. We do write in the ordinance that it's 2 persons per 1 car. The parking on the street is parking on the street, right? So, as I mentioned, I think at one of the previous meetings, I did have a complaint about a particular Airbnb last year. It's a larger one, and there were a lot of people coming, and they were parking in front of the house, and so they were taking 4 or 5 spaces in front of the house, and given where the house was, it was inconvenient for other property owners coming home on a rainy Friday night with their groceries to find parking and have to cross this big street and all of that. So I just called the owners and said, if you put something in your app, online that says, would you please be mindful of parking on the street? Once you unload, if you could park across the street where there's more parking, that would be appreciated. And they complied. So, there's gonna be a certain amount of ambiguity and good naturedness and just respect for the challenge to the parking in Lambertville. I mean, I'm sorry, a vague answer, but that's something that was good as you're gonna get. Bill?
I go a little bit further. I mean, you see in that section, there's, 1, 2, and 3 after it. 1 is if there's a summons issue, for improper parking. Or if there's, like a more civil penalty where if it's a 2-car, driveway, for example, and they try to stack 3 cars in there and there's too many, more cars than are permitted, that happens. That would be a normal, I guess, a zoning violation, if that happens. So there are ways to track, certain violations. I'm talking off street. At this
Are you
point.
saying for people that are trying to put 3 cars in a 2-car space?
Sure.
And they're
that's-
overhanging the
I
side,
think that's one example.
which we currently do now. Which we do enforce, right?
We can?
Right, we should be, right? Because, yeah,
I understand why it's in there, to cover it, but I think, it addresses complaints. I just don't, 3 people come, 3 cars come, there's not 3 cars worth of parking available, so they're parking in the street, and
Well, I have a neighbor, there's a family on my block that 5 people, they have 5 cars.
yeah, exactly.
I can't go tell them that they need to sell 2 of their cars because, you know, the rest of them, there's only 1 car, right? So these are the kinds of things that we just simply, you know, don't have control over, right? So, I mean, I think that it's important that it's in there. I think that, you know, if it becomes an issue with a particular property, we can address it with the property owner. I think that we have enough teeth in this to feel like, you know, that if you get a call from the mayor about, you know, for the 3rd time about a parking issue, and you're not taking care of it, that's a serious problem, and you're at risk for, you know,
You know, I think it's, parking is an issue and it's something that our residents. Frequently talk to us about, and I think it's important that, you know, the residents. Understand that we're trying to balance, the situation and that we appreciate their concerns, right?
absolutely.
So.
Are there other questions or?
Yeah. I do look at over it, just about their fees, you know, I do think they're a little light when I think about all the time that the clerk and the deputy clerk are gonna be spending, I mean. To me, I think that we need to increase that, we've got to account for their time, that's taken away from doing other things, so.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, we had talked about this at the public hearing about, because I used to do that in my job. You just, you know, you take every person that touches it. And you just do a, you know, like a guesstimate about how much time it takes to do like the average application, how much time each person spends, who are all the roles involved. And, you know, if you want to get really, and you kind of do sort of a by like what their hourly rate is, you know, you can probably our finance people can help us with that. And that's the cost, right? And you figure out like, okay, each application costs the city X number of dollars to process, right? So we shouldn't be charging a fee that is lower than the cost for us to operationally complete the process. And if there are other ancillary inspections, like you said, the fire inspector, well, there's time involved there.
But those are not enumerated here because those fees may change, right?
Right.
And so we just said you have to pay those fees, right, whatever they are.
Okay.
So,
Oh, I see.
you know, I'll just, and I'm happy to entertain a higher fee, but, you know, now that I'm looking at it, you know, when I talked to Cindy about this, you know, the current landlord registration fee is $100. So we thought a fee of $250 was, I thought it was appropriate. The change here is that for people who do not file on time, there's a sliding scale that gets more painful along the
Right,
way,
right.
right? And I think that feels appropriate to me. I don't, you know, we can go, listen, if the council wants to raise this $250 fee, fine, but I also want to be mindful that these are properties that are contributing to, you know, they're bringing in revenue, 3% to the city, you know, I don't want it to feel, you know. Anyway,
Well, now that we're going to introduce this and then vote on it, and implement it, then I would suggest like tracking time and for a year. And see what the workload happens and then address the fees after we've experienced a year. And the first year is going to be tough because it's new, as you had said. And so maybe we readdress it to how much time it's taking, get a better feel.
So let me ask you a question. If we wanted to change the fees before we introduce this, can we do that?
You can change them up until introduction.
Right.
I do think that, you know, again, going back to what I was discussing earlier, I think, you know, we came to this, you know, and it's the 250 is based on, you know, an increase from the landlord registration just because there's more work here to be done, but, you know, maybe go with the 250 for now, and if we see after going to the first round, then it's more of a, you know, it takes more time and more efforts from city staff and, you know, increase in the future, and you can base it on.
Right.
And you have a solid foundation, why you're increasing fees.
Oh, okay.
And when I talked to Mayor Noack and I talked about this, it's not the regular people who you know, every year they're responsive, they register, it's the people who've got to
Right, the out of compliance.
chase for a better, you know, and then, you know, and the time you spend preparing the letters, sending it out, the certified letters, it's all of that that takes the time. It's not the regular people who every year, you know, okay, I have to do this, I'm gonna do this.
Right.
And then just to your question, Councilman, Line, I do think that, well, I don't want to hold up introduction of the ordinance. I will say that I do think that moving this along is important in order. I already had somebody come in yesterday who wanted me to walk her through the process of applying for a short-term rental. So, you know, this is out there and I'm not alarmist about like 1,000 people coming in and registering before we adopt, but I'm mindful of it. And I'm also mindful of of what I think is probably going to be an opportunity at some point to amend this ordinance down the road to tinker with it, right? And you know, I think that's possible. I think that it's probable, right? I mean, I think this is a great first place it's a great place to start. And like all our ordinances, and you know, what we've done in the last couple of years is we've amended some of these ordinances to fit kind of the changing needs, the evolution of our needs here in the city and what we want. So you know, I think you raised a good point. And I think it would be something to consider and possibly to include, you know, something, I don't know if we could come up with the wording to do that tonight, or if it's something that the council wants to consider more broadly. But I'm certainly open to it, and it makes sense.
Yeah, and I was just pointing it out, I don't have a problem with what we have here, I just wanted to make that clarification. Because I think what we're really trying to prevent is non-owner occupied absentee landlords, and that really doesn't fall in that same bucket, so.
Correct. Yeah, that point is.
And you're talking about the other half of the house, if someone owns, that would be grandfathered in its current use in the current way.
Correct, and it's just, it's new.
It's going down the road. That we're gonna treat properties as separate properties.
I have one more question. I know you're all gonna kill me, but,
Is it a yes or no?
so how would this ordinance be used or implemented when we have you know, kind of it's extreme, but there are abusive situations where, you know, somebody rents a house, a large house, because we have a number of large houses, right? They rent the whole house and then they invite, you know, 100 of their closest friends, right? So obviously there's noise, but I don't know, how does this ordinance help us, you know, kind of constrain that type of over extension of the use?
In the ordinance, and correct me if I'm missing this, Bill, there is an occupancy standard that will be needed to be met.
Okay.
So just like with a long-term landlord registration, my little 3-bedroom house on Church Street, when we first rented it, we had to give dimensions of the bedrooms. We had to comply with exactly what the maximum occupancy would be. That would be the same for this ordinance. You're not allowed to have 8 people in a 2-bedroom house, right? You're allowed to have 4 people, and you know, I don't know what the rule is about 2 people sleeping on the sofa downstairs. I have no idea if there's any rules about that, but there will be occupancy requirements here, and they will be they have to be part of the registration. They have to be part of the advertisement. They have to be part of the whole thing. So that will be part of the ordinance.
The occupancy, the load,
Correct.
so to speak, the number of people who are allowed to congregate in not only in long term.
Oh,
But
yeah,
also-
and you know, the flip side of that is there are people that will rent a house to have a birthday party for a family member, right? Like, that's not what we're talking about. You know, I'm talking about the 11-bedroom house and like, you know, the entire class of 2023 shows up for the party, you know, it's like that kind of thing. But I would think maybe Lieutenant Brown hears about that.
Yeah. And
Right.
unless I'm mistaken, the largest short-term rental is a 3-bedroom that I've seen. I don't think that there's anything larger than a 3-bedroom.
Well, there's a house for sale near me that's 11 bedrooms, and I was told anecdotally that it could become an Airbnb, so,
Well, yeah.
They gotta move fast.
yeah, so.
Any other questions? Everybody comfortable?
I've got to move fast.
Well, we don't have to, we can move slowly, but that should.
They can't even close.
I want, what, the reason why I asked, I want to make sure that everybody's comfortable with this, because if for some reason if we don't adopt this and we have to start again, we are continuing to allow short-term rentals. So that was a bit of a joke, but you know.
There's no, we're still gonna be issuing the current approvals to
Yes,
people who wanna do
yes,
what we're,
until adoption.
yeah.
Yeah.
Would you like a motion to introduce?
I would like a motion to introduce on first reading, let me get back to the number here.
32/2023.
No prompting.
Thank you. Ordinance number 32-2023 on first reading with a second reading, a public hearing on November 16th, 2023.
So
All right. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. I'm pleased by this, I have to say. I know more than another 30 seconds here, but I think that I really tried the last year and a half to meet the needs of the community, to make sure that we're well balanced and that there's a sense of community and kind of moving forward, but also respect for what we've already done. So thank you to everybody for that. Seven more. Now we'll move on to ordinance's second reading. Ordinance number 29-2023. This is an ordinance to amend the Lambertville City Code 2015, Chapter 7, Section 7-4.8 to include a handicap parking space in front of 111 North Main Street. This has been reviewed by both the police department and public works, and they both. I'm sorry.
111 North.
I'm sorry. Yeah, North Main. This has been reviewed by police department and public works, and they have no issues with either of those. And I'm going to open this right up for public hearing. For ordinance number 29-2023. Are there anybody in the room who would like to speak to this ordinance? Is there anyone in line? Okay, may I have a motion to close the public comment period for this ordinance?
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Fine. Are there any questions for the council on this? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion to adopt on second reading, granting final approval of ordinance number 29-2023.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let me just note for the record that these handicap parking spaces do not belong to the people for whom they are given. They are public spaces and they cannot be reserved. I've recently seen a sign trying to reserve one. So just a little reminder out there that these are public spaces in the right of way, and anybody with the appropriate placard can use them.
Much like when you shovel that space in front of your house.
We're missing a few chairs, lawn chairs.
Yeah, right.
Correspondence, NJDOT notice of fiscal year 2024 local freight impact fund applications for project with 10% large truck volume within the project limits. Traffic study required. If that applies to any of you, feel free to ask City a question. Announcements. This coming Saturday at St. John's, there will be a veterans headstone cleaning. The county commissioner sponsored this. There's cemeteries all around the county. It's from 8 to 11. There's information. There was some information distributed via Lambertville Matters. There is a sign up. I think that's generally required. I will be there right at the time I have to go judge the pet masquerade. I'm going from one thing to another on Sunday. So.
Until I have to put the jambalaya.
Yeah.
As Judy noted earlier, the Delaware River Joint Toll Bridge Commission has a meeting on October 30th. I believe it's at 11 a.m.
I believe.
Yeah, so the public is encouraged to attend and share their thoughts with the Bridge Commission. Oh, by the way, we did invite them to the council meeting, and they directed us to direct you to their public meetings. So that's what I'm doing here. The Halloween parade is scheduled for Sunday, October 29th at 3 p.m. That starts at Mary Sheridan Park, comes up to North Union Street, takes a right on North Union Street, goes to Perry Street, and then crosses into the park, where there will be donuts and cider and all kinds of lovely little things. City Hall will be closing early on Tuesday, October 31st for trick or treat. And budget hearings will be held on Thursday, November 9th at 11 o'clock, Cindy?
I believe they're going to start at 9. We're waiting to put a schedule together based on the availability of department heads.
Thank you. So we will post that far and wide as soon as we know the time. The budget hearing format will continue to be the same. We will record them. There's some questions from the community about public people in the community about having greater access to individual department budgets. I think that the budget hearings should suffice, and certainly if any member of the community has a question about a particular department budget, I'd be happy to direct them to the department head to ask. The hearings will be recorded and available online. The hearing back in 2021 got 1 whopping views since we posted it, so they tend not to be super popular in terms of viewing on YouTube. Convenience center hours, Saturday, November 4th and 18th, 9 to noon, and Wednesday, November 15th from 3 to 5. Now I will open up the meeting for the second round of public participation, just since it's Bill stopped in since we had the first one. I'll just note that you have 3 minutes of uninterrupted time to make your remarks or ask your questions. We have to step up to the podium unless you have mobility issues. Just please state your name and address.
Good evening. Holly Havens, 53 North Union Street. And I'm here to ask some questions about ordinance and then the hotels that are also short-term rentals. Is that going to affect the hotels like the Hog, Lambertville House? Or are they under a separate set of rules?
You're gonna just continue to
Okay,
go through your
okay.
minutes and then
And then the administration of the short-term rental situation, the length, and then you as council have spoken about that. And also the revenue source that you're taking away from the city. When the city passed the 3% bed and breakfast ordinance, we lost all the bed and breakfasts, except for one. So that revenue stream has changed over the course of 20 years for the city. And that's just, so you're enacting an ordinance, you're costing the city more money, and then you're losing the revenue that you would have from short-term rentals is just my public comment. That's all. That's it.
thanks.
Thank you.
Other people in the room?
Paul Stevens, 3940. I just have a question about the ordinance. The grandfathering part, we don't even know how many people there are or how many Airbnbs they are that are non-occupied, owner-occupied. Is there some sort of cutoff that if people don't come and say by such and such a date that, I want to register now, to keep them from somebody from coming back later and say, well, I've been a non-owner occupied for a long time, I shouldn't be grandfathered at a later date. So I'm just curious about the logistics of how that's gonna work.
Anyone else in the room? Is there anybody online with public comment? I have a motion to close the public comment period. So, second, please. Check. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thanks. So Bill, I'm gonna pass the first question over to you about the hotels, like the Hog. I think that, I don't remember this. Will they be excluded from the? They will. I'm not quite sure I understood Holly's question about administration. I'm happy to have a conversation with you about this offline. We did put in a maximum length of any one short-term rental for 31 days. We felt that that was a reasonable number to put in to restrict, one client 31 days. After 31 days, it feels like something other than a short-term rental. So that was one restriction that we did put in. We're not losing any revenue whatsoever. Every short-term rental, as a requirement of the ordinance, has to be registered with the state. The 3% goes to the state and then comes back to the city monthly, when we do get a monthly disbursement report. So that is a component of the registration process. So any existing, any grandfathered short-term rentals and any new short-term rentals will be required to pay the 3% that will wind its way back to Lincolnville. And with just Paul's question, the cutoff is the adoption date, right? So if you're not registered by the time we adopt this, we do not consider you to be in compliance with the ordinance. We have made repeated efforts to send, we've kept a log, we've got a spreadsheet, we've sent, I think, 2 registered letters now to everybody that we have been able to find in online, and we've spent a lot of time online, looking at the sites. So we've talked about this publicly, and I'm sure there's going to be some difficulty about this down the line with somebody who said, I didn't know about it. And that's what Mr. Ogle can send a letter on behalf of the city. Possibly, or the mayor, this mayor will back, he's my wingman, so he can back me up. So yeah, the adoption date is the official date, and we do have a lot of them registered, and after the first registered letter, we had a couple that registered, and I think after the second, they knew we were serious, and we got a couple more, so that's that. There's no more, I'm sorry, there's no more public comments, close, I'm happy to speak to you. But
I just want to understand what you just said.
so the adoption date, the adoption date is the official cutoff for properties that have not registered with the city. Registered with the landlord, yeah, to the proper registration procedure, right, which is the landlord registration, that's what we require. So that.
And if we're gonna be reading it, I think November 16th is gonna be the last date, right?
Right, but there's this estoppel period in this count.
Yes, so it's 20 days after the date of advertisement. So that's usually I get it in the newspaper by the next Wednesday, and then 20 days after that. It actually becomes effective November 16th, but we have that estoppel period that anybody could file an appeal.
So it's really close to 60 days. It's like 50 days. It's usually 30 days from today. And then another 20, right? Or 21 or 2, because you don't get it in Thursday, you do it the next week, and then 20 days after. So it's close to 60 days.
Close to that, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Point of clarity,
Yes.
the hotel motel tax is not just 3%. The 3% can come back to the city, but the state collects sales tax and a portion of the hotel motel tax to fund the programs done by the New Jersey Travel and Tourism, and so the tax that is not just so you know, it's not just the 3%. We get up, the city receives the 3%, but the tax is bigger than that, just to equal the playing field. I just want to.
Yep, and just one last slide before I ask for a motion to adjourn. We do get a disbursement report every month from the state with a total. So we don't get a breakdown by category. So it's Airbnb, it's Evolve, it's whoever, and so it's just a total at the bottom. So Evolve is on the state system. They showed up on our last month's report. So we don't get an individual breakdown, but we do get a total. So and on that note, I would ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Close public.
Oh, I'm sorry. You didn't close the public comment?
Oh, we did, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Come on, good, yeah.
So
Yeah.
we all agreed to leave, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. We appreciate it.
The cable's out. Thought that.